A $1.4 billion NFL stadium was designed to hold 85,000 fans on a platform suspended above active train tracks. Another had a roof so massive it needed 18 steel cables stretching over 200 meters just to stay up. Yet none of these megastructures hosted a single game. Why did these engineering marvels collapse before rising? And what secrets do their blueprints still hide? Welcome to Big Builds. The Westside Stadium. Imagine building a structure the size of a small city, not on solid ground, but on a massive platform floating above active train tracks. That was the audacious plan for the Westside Stadium in New York City, proposed in 2004. This stadium was designed to be a state-of-the-art, 85,000-seat arena with a retractable roof built right on Manhattan's waterfront. The roof was a key engineering feature, allowing the stadium to transform into an 18,600 square meter indoor convention hall, roughly the size of 3 American football fields when not hosting games. This dual purpose was meant to justify its staggering cost, estimated at over $1 billion, potentially reaching $1.4 billion. But this grand vision faced a concrete wall of opposition. Neighborhood groups worried about the massive increase in traffic and crowds in an already packed area. James Dolan, who owned Madison Square Garden, fought tooth and nail against it. He did not want a new stadium competing for concerts and events, and his company, Cablevision, spent millions on aggressive advertising and lawsuits to block the project. Powerful politicians also stood against it, arguing that public money was desperately needed to rebuild Lower Manhattan after the September 11th attacks, showing a clear clash of priorities. The final blow, the real nail in the coffin, came when New York lost its bid to host the 2012 Olympic Games to London. The stadium was a central piece of that Olympic dream, and without the Games, the main reason for its huge public funding and its dual use simply vanished. The loss of the Olympics removed the political and economic push that might have overcome all the opposition. With the Olympic dream gone, the Westside Stadium was buried, and the Jets football team stayed in New Jersey. Farmers Field. Let us head west to another major city's similar struggle. For a long time, Los Angeles was the biggest city in the United States without an NFL team. Many ideas popped up, like stadiums near Dodger Stadium or at Grand Crossing. One of the most talked about was Farmers Field, a shining beacon of hope for football fans. Proposed in 2010, Farmers Field was planned for downtown LA, right next to the famous Staples Center. It was designed by Gensler and would have seated 72,000 people, with the ability to expand to 76,000 for huge events like the Super Bowl. The estimated cost was a staggering $1.2 billion. This stadium boasted a cool, translucent outer shell and a giant video screen outside the stadium, meant to engage fans even before they stepped inside. It was also designed with a retractable roof and would connect to a convention hall and an outdoor plaza, making it a versatile venue. Despite its fancy design and prime location, not a single NFL team, not the Raiders, Rams, or Chargers, wanted to play there. The main reason was a fundamental disagreement over money and control. AEG, the company that owned the stadium, wanted a share of the team's ownership. NFL teams, as the saying goes, only receive, they do not give. This demand for a piece of the team from a stadium developer was a direct deal breaker for the football clubs. Beyond the ownership dispute, the plan looked like a nightmare for LA's already terrible traffic. Imagine adding tens of thousands of cars to an already congested downtown area. On top of that, residents living nearby worried about being pushed out of their homes, rising costs, and less access to parks. These community concerns, while not the primary reason for the NFL team's rejection, added another layer of opposition, making the project less viable overall. Ultimately, Farmers Field was a beautiful design, but no team wanted to call it home. Los Angeles had to wait even longer for an NFL team. This brings us to another city that fought hard to keep its team, only to face a similar outcome. The Red Herring Stadium. When the Rams football team moved to St. Louis in 1995, their contract stated that their stadium, the Edward Jones Dome, had to be a top-tier facility by 2015. When it was clear the old dome would not meet this standard, the city tried desperately to keep the team by proposing a brand new, beautiful stadium called the National Car Rental Field. This open-air stadium was planned to seat up to 72,000 people, though other reports indicate a 64,000-seat capacity. It would have cost a whopping $1.1 billion. A big chunk of that, over $400 million, was supposed to come from public money. The design by HOK was impressive, featuring a natural grass field, multiple concourses, and a spot right on the St. Louis waterfront, perfect for hosting big games like the Super Bowl. It even had unique features like a wall of public art, a brew pub, a 9.1-meter-wide observation deck, rainwater gardens, and cool glass and steel shades over the top. National Car Rental even signed a $158 million deal over 20 years for naming rights. But here's the shocking truth. The Rams owner, Stan Kroenke, was never truly on board. The stadium proposal was a red herring, a deliberate distraction amid a bitter, ugly legal fight between the team, the city, and the state. This means that despite all the public effort and design work, the project was essentially doomed from the start because the team owner had already decided to move the team. There were big fights over public funding, with lawsuits challenging whether the city could pay for it without a public vote. The NFL itself even called the funding plan unsatisfactory and inadequate because it asked for too much money from the league. While these financial and legal hurdles were significant, they were symptoms of Kroenke's underlying intention to move, rather than the primary cause of the stadium's failure to keep the team. The city spent millions on a proposal that was, in effect, a pawn in a larger relocation strategy. After spending more than $16 million of taxpayer money on this failed plan, St. Louis still lost their team. Kroenke then announced he was building the $2 billion SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, notably without public funds. San Diego's endless pursuit. Let us turn our attention to San Diego, a city that faced a similar heartbreak. For years, the San Diego Chargers played in an old stadium called Qualcomm. It was getting old and tired, and the team desperately needed a new home. The city of San Diego tried everything, listening to many ideas for new stadiums in different places like Oceanside, Chula Vista, and downtown. They were eager to keep their team. In 2015, fancy pictures of new stadiums were shown, sparking hope among fans. But there was a big problem. The Chargers owner, Dean Spanos, wanted the city to pay for most of the new building. This demand for public funding became the central point of contention, a familiar sticking point in stadium negotiations across the country. However, the people of San Diego had already seen studies showing they were losing money on the old Qualcomm Stadium. This prior negative experience with public investment in a sports venue made them highly resistant to new demands. They did not want to pay for another expensive new building that might not benefit them. They voted no multiple times on all the plans, clearly showing their unwillingness to use taxpayer money for the stadium. So, Spanos packed up the team and moved them to Los Angeles, where they now share a stadium with the Rams. San Diego, a city that loved its Chargers, was left without an NFL team, a direct consequence of the unresolved public funding dispute. The Chargers' departure left a void, much like the Patriots' threat to leave Hartford years earlier. Hartford's Patriot play. In 1998, Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, made a huge announcement. He was moving his team to Hartford, Connecticut. This was not just about a stadium. It was a whole new waterfront area. The plan called for a massive stadium with 68,000 seats, along with a hotel, a shopping mall, and entertainment spots, all planned to be built in just 4 years. They even planned to share the money the stadium made with the state, making it seem like a win-win situation. But the truth behind this grand announcement was not a genuine desire to relocate. This was a classic leverage play, a common tactic used by professional sports team owners. The primary goal was to pressure the state of Massachusetts into offering a more favorable deal for a new stadium there. By publicly declaring a move to Hartford, Kraft created a sense of urgency and competition, forcing his home state to improve its offer. Even with a big plan, people in Hartford pushed back. They found problems with the chosen spot, and the entire deal eventually fell apart. These local challenges, while real, also provided convenient excuses for the Patriots to withdraw their proposal once the desired concessions were secured back in Massachusetts. The aftermath was clear. Connecticut's governor was furious, even stating he would become a fan of the rival Jets. The Patriots, of course, got their new stadium, Gillette, back in Massachusetts, which opened in 2000. Hartford was left with just a memory of a very expensive threat. This strategic move, while successful for the Patriots, left Hartford with a failed dream, much like another Michigan city that faced an even wilder, more impractical stadium concept. Detroit's daring duo. Before the Pontiac Silverdome was even built, back in 1973, there was an even crazier idea for Pontiac, Michigan. The city wanted to bring both the NFL's Lions and the MLB's Tigers to town. Their solution? Build them right next to each other and have them share a roof. The concept sketch showed a giant mobile roof that could slide back and forth, covering one stadium at a time, or even the parking lot. Imagine the engineering challenge of moving a roof that could cover two massive sports venues. In 2018, a company called Vivid Seats and NeoMam Studios even made fancy new pictures of this idea, and even in full color, it looked ridiculous. The idea of a shared mobile roof was a grand, perhaps technologically premature, concept that failed due to fundamental impracticality, high costs, and a lack of buy-in from the potential tenants. This project ended up being way too expensive, and the Detroit Tigers, the baseball team, were never really keen on moving 19.3 kilometers north from Detroit anyway. It is important to understand that the actual Pontiac Silverdome that was built in 1975 had its own innovative, but eventually problematic roof. It featured a huge, inflated fabric roof covering about 4.86 hectares, held up by air pressure from powerful fans. This roof, weighing about 6,800 kilograms, was supported by 18 crisscrossing cables, each up to 228.6 meters long. The stadium stood 61.6 meters tall. While an engineering marvel for its time, it later suffered collapses from snowstorms in 1985 and 2013. It was eventually torn down in 2017 to 2018 due to extensive damage and an inability to find a qualified company for repairs. The shared roof idea was a wild dream that thankfully never became a reality. And speaking of wild ideas, Chicago had one that was truly an architectural oddity. Chicago's architectural oddity. Someone, perhaps a very ambitious architect, dreamed up the Chicago Sports Complex. This plan was truly wild, an outdoor baseball stadium right next to an indoor football stadium. Imagine the sheer scale of this project, two massive venues sharing a wall. The Bears football team would have played in a 78,000-seat stadium, and the White Sox baseball team in a 54,000-seat park. It was planned for the North Loop part of South Chicago, a dense urban area. The Illinois legislature rejected this plan in 1990. The concept was simply too ambitious and impractical. Think about the immense noise from two simultaneous games, the traffic chaos, and the sheer logistical nightmare of having two massive, different sports venues sharing a wall in a dense urban area. Such a design would have created overwhelming challenges related to access, event scheduling, shared infrastructure, and integration into the existing urban fabric. This bizarre double stadium was a dream that was simply too big, too complicated, and too out of touch with reality. These grand stadium dreams often crash for similar reasons: huge costs, political battles, and designs that were simply too ambitious or impractical. So, which of these failed stadium ideas surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to see more stories of incredible builds and shocking failures, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you do not miss our next video.